is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
You have to be strong in today's world.
With Nahaja Black, sponsored by Bar Retreat and Spa, Atlantis Paradise Island, First Caribbean Bank, and JS Johnson.
Accept less than who you are. Live your best life. Be strong and free. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
Good afternoon, Bahamas, and welcome to the Hit Back. I'm your host, Nahaja Black. Listen, y'all, it has been a long day. It has been a long day, but it is a great day. This is one of those days that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. I can't complain. I hope that everybody's doing well, taking care of yourself, living your best life, as we would hope that everybody is. Shout out. Okay, so I got to send a shout out. So apparently, like I said, I've been hearing this a lot from parents, right? What I've been hearing a lot from parents is that their children love my intro song. Okay. Special thanks to Sammy Starr for giving me a great intro song. The kids, by the way, proud parents. They have proud parents. A proud parent, Nathaniel and Paige Adams. Very proud parents of Jathan and Jada. Shout out to Jathan and Jada, wherever you are. What's up, little people? Okay. I tell you, my kids love it. The kids love it. I feel like if nobody else likes the song, the children love the song. And I feel like if you know anything about business, if you get children to like something, you can't help it. The parents are going to have to pay. There's a lot of kids. I always say if you got a business model where children are the number one source of that business, and it's a thing, you can get the kids to go ahead and force parents to pay for it. Why is slime so effective as a great business model? It's just slime. But I got children who will watch slime videos all day. It's ridiculous. Like when they have slime apps. So now I just make slime on it, which is a cleaner version. I like slime apps more than I like slime itself. Hello, everybody. Happy whatever today is. Wednesday. It's Wealthy Wednesday. We got a good show for you today. I have why I like Wednesdays, of course, back with this Wealthy Wednesday thing. I got friends who are making money in crypto, friends who are making money in real estate, friends wish they were making more money than they are now, friends who are making no money and trying to figure out how to get on this money-making train. I tell you all, the train only got 6 cars. That's how I feel most times. The train only got 6 cars, and there's 6,000 of us trying to get on this one train that's only 6 cars. But somehow, y'all, I've learned a long time ago, there is abundance. Don't think like there isn't any money in the world. There's tons of it. We just got to get on the train, right? Just figure out who is heading in the direction of getting on the rat race and then just tag along. Don't be uncomfortable being the third wheel with rich people. Or with people who got more, annoy them. Y'all got issues. Listen, there's a time when you got to be a pest. Who was it? There was someone in the Bible who just annoyed the other person. It's like, you gonna mentor me. Who was that? Find that person and be mentored by them. I like Wednesdays because that's the day when we talk about different streams and opportunities of revenue in country. It's intentional that we do it because, again, all government does is do policies. If you're waiting for government to give you a paycheck, you're in the wrong vision mindset. All governments do is create policies that we demand that we have so that we can be the best people we want to be. Now, shout out again, Jathan and Jaden, right? Paige and Nathaniel Adams. I called your children's names them. Tell me what they think or what they thought when they heard it. Because, I love all the kids. I just don't want to babysit them, but I love all the kids. I don't do babysitting. Anybody want to borrow my 1-year-old? Gladly. But I digress. That is not the quality of show to talk about parenting matters. That is not the show today. So I have a special guest who's going to join me on the break. Of course, economist Rupert Pinder is going to be joining me. Of course, you didn't know that was going to happen. Tomorrow, the next two shows also got pretty strong shows. Tomorrow, joining me would be ambassador for China. The Chinese Ambassador Dai, will be joining me on the show tomorrow. And we're going to talk about our relationship, the relationship between China and the Bahamas. What is China's relationship to climate change? Right? What are their thoughts on climate change? We know that President Xi wasn't there at the conference. He sent a representative, but he and the Russian president were the only ones not there at COP26 in terms of world leaders. So that's very interesting. Also, on Friday, we did ask yesterday for the economic advisor, Minister of State for Economic Affairs, not an economic advisor, Minister of State for Economic Affairs, Michael Halkitis. I got the confirmation today. And why is that important? I'm ending up with a lot more questions than answers. And when you're talking about the economy, I need more answers. And so I'm not feeling I need more answers. And so I'm very happy that I got the call today that it is confirmed that Mr. Halkitis will be joining us tomorrow on Friday. Ambassador Dai will be joining us tomorrow. Today, we've got economist Rupert Pinder. Have you guys heard? Glenys Hannah Martin, Minister of Education, had a powerful speech. I can tell you, she sounded a little freedom fighterish. Yeah, sounded a little freedom fighterish. She has the spirit of a father for sure. Very eloquent speech. And then you heard the big bombshell of the news. The big bombshell in terms of news was this one right here, where we found out today, and I'll make sure I can see it as best as possible, where we found out today that while no date has been identified, Minister of Education Glenys Hannah Martin said her ministry is preparing for the resumption of face-to-face instruction at public schools. However, she said multiple schools will not be ready until next year due to their unsatisfactory state. Among the schools are L.W. Young Junior High School, Yellow Elder Primary, C.W. Sawyer Primary, Ridgeland Primary, Sybil Strawn Primary, S.C. McPherson Junior High, Uriah McPhee Primary, Gerald Piash Primary, Carlton E. Francis Primary, Center for the Deaf, Ellen Coakley High, Exuma, Georgetown Primary. What a time. I tell you, I don't even know what to say. I mean, that's a lot of schools, y'all. That's a lot of schools. L.W. Young. Now, mind you, see, I have a little feeling here. I got a little thing. C.W. Sawyer is my old primary school. Love me some C.W. Sawyer. C.W. Sawyer was sitting, waiting to be repaired. From King Hatchet was a hammer. I've always had a challenge with us putting the school's budget or the repair for schools coming at the end, or the budget, at the end of the fiscal budget, which would be in July, though we know schools open in September. So we would find that at the end of we would have it mid-July, beginning of July is the fiscal budget, and then schools would be reopening in September. And a lot of times, because of the delay in getting funds, we have schools that open late or not repaired. Here are some of the challenges with this now. I will say that we all know for the past few years, the country has been kind of in a back and forth, right? And I hear the question being, well, why weren't they repaired? We were down for 2 years, whatever. But I think we have to be honest, fair here in this one assessment that this has been a challenging fiscal period. Now, the question I would have, fiscal period, the past 18 months, 2 years, we know that schools have been closed most of the time. C.W. Sawyer was never ready. That means, and C.W. Sawyer is the one I'm certain of, because when there were classes, children were at the UB campus, right? They were at the College of the Bahamas, University of the Bahamas campus, right? So, someone says that she's practiced her responses. I know C.W. Sawyer's students, they were at the University of the Bahamas for a while. Okay, so I don't know what happened here for however long, and I'm using that as an outlier. I'm wondering if, are we talking about schools that have been sitting in disrepair for over 18 odd months? then you have to ask the question, was the previous budget, did it have in it funds for repair? If it did have in it funds for repair, then obviously the repairs weren't done. So that were those funds then put into the pandemic with regard to health? So we would just need to know, how were those funds redirected? Because obviously repairs weren't done. And and someone says, what the heck was Jeff Lloyd doing? I don't know, but I'm going to say this. We have been in a financial quandary for more than that, if you count Dorian, right? But this administration, the former administration, had some challenges financially. Were they redirecting funds to stay afloat? We were paying $1 million, doing $1 million in food assistance for, I think at minimum it was 17 weeks at one point. That's as far as I remember. So we were doling out some cash. So were funds for school repairs or Ministry of Education being sent out to other areas, being redirected? Okay. However, and that could probably explain the disrepair, but someone got to explain to me when they thought school was going to reopen. Because at some point you kind of knew school needed to be reopened. That school had to be reopening, or you thought COVID was going to last forever. Now we have it where the schools are being said that they're in a state of disrepair, so much so L.W. Young Jr., Yellow Elder Primary, C.W. Sawyer, still hurting my heart about C.W. Sawyer. Because C.W. Sawyer is also one of those schools that was, supposedly bought laptops. I don't even think, computers and whatnot, not by the last administration, but by the one prior, but they weren't installed. So they were sitting there dry rotten. A lot of children could have used those. And then there was some talk of wiring up the schools so that the schools could be wired. And the school never, what happened? The school never opened. I still don't understand. This is concerning to me. And, God bless her. The speech was good. Now I need a date on what, next year, next year? And these are all our primary schools. All of the, I have an issue. I have an issue with the fact that, thank God, and it's so sad. I have this issue, y'all, where I think private, any form of education in a country that seeks to have some sort of equitable, some parity, some a semblance of reasoning and thought of education and empowerment. Any time when I have to pay for education, other than tertiary, I think is an injustice to everyone else, because there are a lot of parents who would love for their children to go to private school. They can't afford it. They're good parents. They are frustrated. They are hurt. They are saddened that their children cannot go to school. But I could afford to pay for my child to go to private school, so my children are in school. And then there are parents who are struggling to afford this, and their children are in school. So my having money further increases the divide between the haves and the have-nots. As anyone else noticed, this is unfair. This is a travesty. Now, what I would like to hear is the level of urgency. What are the plans, right? What are the plans? I said Ridgeland Primary. Someone says Ridgeland Primary is still hurting her heart. My son needs to go to school. I'm tired. I'm heartbroken because we are further. Education is pivotal to a growing of a society and of a young mind. And how many of these primary schools, listen to the amount of primary schools that aren't ready. Yellow Elder Primary, C.W. Sawyer Primary, Ridgeland Primary, Sybil Strawn Primary. I don't even know what that is, honestly. S.C. McPherson, that's junior high. Uriah McPhee, Gerald Cash, Carlton E. Francis, Georgetown Primary. Ragged Island All-Age School, someone said. At some point, we need to start saying this ain't making no kind of sense. I mean, my God, what were we doing? What were we doing? This is a new school. This is a brand new school year. So then I would have to ask, do we redirect funds because of the pandemic? Because I can't believe, I will not believe, and I won't even go there with that mindset that funds were spent or contracts done paid out, but work not done. And that was not what the minister insinuated at all, just that the repairs weren't completed. So I'm assuming, and that's what we will see, that the budget perhaps was that the monies were redirected. All right, so Sybil Strawn is the former Carmichael primary. Thank you. So I think, listen, someone says there has to be another list because there's probably more schools probably off the list. And that doesn't mean that the schools that are off the list, you're right, Ansela. The stuff that are off the list doesn't mean that they're perfect. I don't know what to say here. I am saddened for all of our parents. I don't like that. When you understand my gripe on this, y'all would understand why this hurts my heart. It really does, because I have an issue where if you have money, your kids can learn. I already have an issue with paying for education. Not that I can't afford education. I just don't like that if you can pay for education, you will have a better education for your kids in the formative years of primary and high school. I don't believe that income should determine how well educated you are. And I came up in public schools. I came up in C.W. Sawyer, R.M. Bailey. I know how good those schools are. And, for me, the opportunities, my public speaking didn't come until I was in R.M. Bailey. My ability to communicate. So for me, these things are vitally important, man. And I'm just really saddened by this. I'm really saddened by this. I feel for every parent whose children who won't see face to face. My daughter in grade 3 is doing face to face. My fifth grader is doing a hybrid learning. I'm grateful, but I understand that it's unfair. It is unfair. And we need to have a code red level of urgency. And the fact that the minister is saying that now these schools will not be ready until next year due to their unsatisfactory state. Wow. This is very disheartening. I won't lie to you. And I'm with you. Someone says, my question is why every year there's so much work to be done to these schools? Poor job on the maintenance of these schools. C.W. Sawyer was the best in the 80s. You ain't lying. All right. And someone says it's similar for paying for healthcare, Mrs. Black. You get a better experience. You're right. And that's why I tell you, certain places you just wish you could learn from it, right? Certain places you wish you could learn from, and we do better. Healthcare, we could do better. Because we don't, PMH doesn't have to be that way. Education, we can do better. We can do better. There's a lot of schools that are now being children who are not going, and this affects the income too. This affects the economy. And so, yes, we want the children to be safe. And now we need to figure out what is the way to get these schools repaired. And the key, to answer a question, why do they take so long, these repairs and these maintenance? Like I mentioned, looking at the budget, what I was told years ago is look at when the budget is done. The national budget is done in July, I think it is. By that time, we are looking to open school in September. Most times repairs start mid-July, end of July. And depending on the level of repair, you get in piece. So schools tend to open late anyway, most schools. Government schools, because repairs are taking so long. Or you cannot do the balcony change because the steel is rusting and swelling and breaking up. You can't do that change because school has to start. I've been a proponent saying, why don't we put, the funds for education, have it doled out at another time earlier than the budget so that we can be on time, so that we can have all of summer. So as soon as school closes, we have repairs that are substantial. And when we do repairs, put history in the halls of our high schools, our primary schools. That every school should have the bust, so the face of whomever the school is named after and the history of it. Have a room just for the history of whom the school is named after. And the library in a school should be a monument to whom this person is named after. But all of these things, I'm very disappointed. So if you're just tuning in, before we switch gears and talk about VAT, while no date has been identified, as has been stated by the minister, while no date has been identified, Minister of Education Glenys Hannah Martin said her ministry is preparing for the resumption of face-to-face instruction at public schools. However, she said multiple schools will not be ready until next year due to their unsatisfactory state. Among those schools are LW Young Junior High, Yellow Elder Primary, C.W. Sawyer Primary, Ridgeland Primary, Sybil Strawn Primary, S.C. McPherson Junior High, Uriah McPhee Primary, Gerald Cash Primary, Carlton E. Francis Primary, Center for the Deaf. My God, we'd even disadvantaging our disabled even more. Ellen Coakley High School, Exuma, Georgetown Primary. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM. We'll be back. And someone says, Nahaja, I had to use the restroom at Doris Johnson during election, and that was a horror scene. What a time. We'll be back after this.
It's Spa Week, we got what you need. Sit back, relax, and come in for a treat. We just wanna make you smile. We will go the extra mile at Baja Retreat Spa.
Come visit us at Baja Retreat Spa on East Bay Street.
Relax and come in for
Contact us at 323-6711 or visit us online at www.baharetreat.com.
What does Christmas mean to you? What about making a loved one's face smile bright or driving your own car? CIBC First Caribbean gives you up to 100% financing on auto loans. Apply online and let our auto financing take you places this Christmas. Visit CIBCFCIB.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply.
We are working to protect our country, our people, and our livelihoods so that we can move forward. The vaccine is safe. The vaccine is easy. The vaccine is essential for our recovery. If we want to rebuild our economy, if we want to get back to our jobs, if we want to get back to our lives, our families, we must do this together.
This is Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
Hi, what's up, my people? Okay. So it's a beautiful day. I'm actually feeling, when you ever had one of those days when, you're so tired that you're kind of goofy, you're kind of off. It's like you drank something, but you really didn't. So you can't even take yourself seriously. But I actually have a very serious show for you today. I like this. I like today's show. And actually, that means that I have to get my mind into smart mode. Again, special hello to Jathan and Jada. I know you're listening, guys. Special thanks. And to all of my little people, again, I say hello. Someone says, proud graduate of CC Sweeting. I'm a teacher. My sister's a geologist. My other sister's a marine biologist. My other sister's a cosmetologist. And my brother's a fisherman. We all pass through the halls of CC Sweeting. Get these schools together. Not being able to see students face-to-face is crippling. The practical subjects, auto mechanics, carpentry, art, performing arts, plumbing. I love it. I love that. That was excellent. And so this speaks about how much education is of value in this country. Most country schools is and has been opened. You're right on that. Schools have been opened. Have been opened across the world. And, I got to say special thanks to, I look at the schools, NCA, ain't been playing. St. John's, same here. St. John's, St. Anne's, all of these private schools ready. Teachers have been ready to go back to school. Anyways, I want to talk about something really quickly because, of course, something else now This conversation of VAT is a real one. I want to bring on my guest, Professor Rupert Pinder, joining us here, economist, and I see his camera's off. And Rupert, if you're there, just make sure wave and cut on your camera because we're about to get set to get on air. What is going on now? Of course, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention because I have been bringing it up. Things that always affect the breadbasket items for me, things that affect our pocketbook is very important. Obviously, it's important to all of us. And the main challenges we face right now is the economy, right? The economy is our main challenge apart from healthcare. Someone says, well, Carmel been open as well. Tell me all the schools that have been open because I want to know all the schools who've been open. Let's shout them out. So I got my friend Rupert Pinder. I trust this gentleman. This gentleman has been on the money in this pandemic. Rupert, welcome to the show. How have you been, my friend?
Good. And you?
I'm good. It's good to have you on the show. All right, Rupert. Now let's talk about this. There's been a lot of talk, and I wanted to chat with you briefly on this with regard to overall the idea of VAT reduction from 12 to 10% as a stimulus, as a stimulating factor, if it is, to the economy. And what are your thoughts on it? Because of course, like I said, you are one of the economists. I only have two. I really go to. It's you and Doc. And so I trust you two implicitly with just the data, with the information, the empirical information, no emotion, no fluff. 10% from 12 to 10%. Give me your thoughts.
Well, I guess I'll park the stimulus part of it separately, right? Because I think that one actually is a bit loaded. So and you could actually have a whole conversation just around that. But in terms of the overall reduction, in terms of from 12 to 10%, and I just want to provide some things by way of a bit of a context. I think it was about, and you can keep me honest, I think it was like about 3 budget cycles ago when we had increased the value-added tax. Well, actually, it's a little longer than that because I think it was shortly after the former administration came to office. I think we had increased the VAT from 7.5% to 12%. Mm-hmm. And at that time, when we had increased the value-added tax from 7.5% to 12%, which was roughly about a 60% increase in the value-added tax, the projection at that time was a 60% uplift in terms of revenues attributed to the 60% increase in the value-added tax. Mm-hmm. And fast forward, one of the things that and I think it came out when the dust had settled, when you look at the actuals were far less than the 60% in terms of revenues. And so one of the things here is that it's almost assumed that a 60% increase in the value-added tax would have given you almost a one-to-one sort of relationship in terms of the same sort of uptake in terms of revenues. And the long and short of it all here is that an increase in taxes generally is, it depends on people's responsiveness. It doesn't logically follow that an increase in the tax rate would lead to an increase in revenues. That's the first thing.
Okay, so it doesn't mean that an increase in the tax rate. So an increase in the tax rate doesn't necessarily mean an increase in the revenues.
And granted, while you may have had some increase in the overall revenues, it was certainly at that time in terms of, I think it was 1 year thereabouts out from the 60% increase in the value-added tax. We certainly did not get a 60% increase in overall revenues. And so generally that is true. And the converse is also and if you take the converse, generally speaking, a reduction in the tax rate doesn't logically follow that you'll have a reduction in revenues. Because again, it is based on the level of responsiveness. One of the things that, and this has been supported by empirical evidence, there is, depending on people's level of responsiveness, there is a likelihood that a reduction in the tax rate, including something like a consumption-based tax, can lead to an increase in overall revenues. But again, a lot of these things has to be modeled over time, right? Now, one of the things here is that when we increase the value-added tax from 7.5% to 12%, We also introduced a number of zero-rated and VAT-exempted items, although, of course, bearing in mind that exemptions and zero-rated, there's a subtle distinction, but I don't think we need to necessarily get into that right now. But a lot of the items the VAT was taken off a lot of items. What happened here, in my view, is that I think we introduced a level of complexity. So when we had this, originally when we had the 7.5% value-added tax, we had it across all of the items. It was very easy to administer because there were few items that were not included in terms of the 7.5%. So it made it very easy to administer. And if I'm not mistaken, I think some of the international agencies, I think including the IMF, if I'm not mistaken, had basically praised us in terms of the low tax rate of 7.5%, broad base, and there was a higher degree of efficiency, right?
Yes.
When we increased it from 7.5% to 12%, and though well-intentioned, and we took it off a lot of items, perhaps with the intent and obviously in terms of bringing relief to some of the more vulnerable groups, we introduced a level of complexity. So, for example, to give you an example, let us just say that if we said, hey, look, we're not applying VAT, value-added tax, to medication. The question is, what is medication? Are you talking prescription medication, or are you talking over-the-counter? The more broader the definition is, the more the likelihood in terms of tax evasion, right? And the more broadly you define the definition, you run the risk, because in some cases, the more items that are included, it becomes that much more difficult to police. Because from a policing standpoint, and you hear all the time people talking about, somebody need to watch these prices, etc. But the reality of it is that the price control only applies to a very narrow range of products. And
surprising. Really, it is a narrow range.
And so the more you broadly define it, you lead to what is known in economics in terms of a loss of efficiency. So at the end of the day, let's just say that if you apply a zero rate or no taxes on medication, and somebody's bringing in everything from cough drops to to Vicks rub. What happens at the end of the day here is that you can very well end up with a situation where the government is not collecting any taxes by way of the tax not being applied on that item. And then at the same time, the merchant is not passing on any cost savings or any price reduction to the consumer. So if the consumer is not benefiting as a result of a price reduction, and at the same time, the government is not getting the benefit by way in terms of any uplift in terms of revenues, then it leads to an overall loss within the system. When you have a broad-based sort of taxes with few exemptions, then in that case you're able to hopefully capture more by way of revenues in terms of some of these items and maybe able to slip through the cracks. And at the, so the government benefits in terms of the additional revenues, and at the same time, there's no loss of the system to the extent to which the merchant is not, taking advantage by not passing on in terms of the overall price reduction.
If you're just tuning in, Rupert Pinder, economist and professor at UB. Okay, Rupert, let me ask you this. Someone asked a great question. Should we drop the VAT rate broadly to 7.5% with no exemptions? But I think one of the things too is that Minister Halkitis, Minister of State for Economic Affairs, said that they are going to keep it. They see no reason to go back up to 12. They're going to keep it at 10. And I remember thinking to myself years ago, when we were talking about, hey, we're going to have so much money, we're going to get to this, to drop the deficits, I think, by a certain percentage point, and we're going to reduce the amount of money or fees that you pay at customs. We're going to have this level of surplus that we may be at one point, we may be happy and reduce VAT overall, like cut it, like a good cut. Someone says they never give money back. someone said the government never gives money back. You can increase VAT, but they can do income tax all they want, but they'll never give you your money back. Just the fact that we moved to 10% is stunning if it stays. Do you think we can get to a 7.5% if we collect revenue sufficiently?
Well, again, I mean, I certainly don't want to go there on a limb in terms of, in terms of any seven or even start throwing out some numbers, because at the end of the day, a lot of these things actually has to be modeled. And Nahaja, and I'm, you certainly have an appreciation in terms of, what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these things have to be modeled. You have to run through some of the scenarios to assess in terms of the overall impact. Because for a lot of these things, if you get it wrong, I mean, you can really create a lot of damage. So there has to be that level of careful analysis with respect to that. Now, the other aspect of it too, and again, I also want to treat this as academic sort of exercise, because at the end of the day, you also have a role in terms of educating the public and educating your audience. The other aspect of it that I think that we also have to be careful of, and that is that to the extent to which you look in terms of any sort of reduction to be stimulating, right? Because what really stimulates the economy is really in terms of growth. And in my view, this economy, in my view, grows by way of injection from the outside. U.S. dollars is really the real stimulus.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we have to be careful in terms of what I would term, quote unquote, recycle layer, right? So Bahamian dollars is really not, in my view, a stimulus. I mean, it's really in terms of U.S. dollars, in terms of providing real real injection in terms of uplift. Now, yes, you want to look in terms of some sort of redistributive, sort of impact. Ideally, I think over time, in my humble opinion, I think we have to look at more progressive form of taxation, and that in itself can be a separate show. Yeah. But bearing in mind, and again, to provide some things by way of context, tax as a proportion of GDP is less than 20%. I think it's like around 18, 19%. So if you were to look at our total tax revenues, inclusive of value-added tax, it's still less than 20%. The overall...
And you say inclusive of value-added tax, so you're including with that duties?
Everything. I just looked at the chart ahead of this show, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like hovering somewhere around 19%. Mm-hmm. Most of the international agencies, I think it was like about 5-6 years ago when they did an assessment within the region, and I also saw a very interesting chart, because within the region, the tax as a proportion of GDP is anywhere from about 20 to 30%. I think there was one Latin American country. Well, Cuba is an anomaly for any number of reasons. I think theirs is like around 38%. So you can take that out as an outlier. So let us disregard that. But it's anywhere from 20 to 30%. So if you were to take the arithmetic mean of something between 20 to 30%, we can be anywhere in terms of like around 25%. And again, I mean, so what it suggests is that there are areas that arguably we are undertaxed, and there are areas where there's overtaxed, right? Because the system is such that it's a highly regressive form of taxation. And Nahaja, if I may, I also want to introduce another point that you and I would have spoken about ahead of this show, which I think is also very important.
Yeah.
To point out, and that was just that there've been a lot of discussion in terms of the overall reduction, in terms of the 12 to 10%, and in terms of the impact of some of the more vulnerable groups. Bearing in mind that if it is found that there is a group that is impacted as a result of, let us just say, in terms of the introduction of value-added tax on some of the breadbasket items, there are certain things that you can actually do to mitigate that. And that is, for example, international agencies talk all about the time, or all about this whole scenario of having more targeted subsidies to some of the more vulnerable groups. So you can look in terms of transfers to offset that. But also bearing in mind that whenever people talk about the impact of these sort of things in terms of the vulnerable group, the assumption here is that somebody has done the survey, or somebody knows in terms of how how these groups are actually impacted.
And break it down just to make sure that folks understand what you're saying. That the study, what you're saying, because I thought that was an interesting point, that you're saying we haven't done really any
Nahaja, I cannot say whether or not, I cannot say so much in terms of that, because obviously...
Have you seen any, though? I've never seen any.
I guess what I will say, and again, I open myself to be challenged on this, and that's fine, because it'll be a learning exercise, and that is this. Over the years, and that's not to say the study doesn't exist, but I haven't seen a study where there is a survey in terms of the breadbasket items, right? So, for example, I think for years now, we have had a basket of items that seem to have existed for so many years, right? So the question that I would have is that is that consumption still relevant today? Because, for example, when I live among the poor, right? So, for example, when I look at my neighbors, right? I don't see people necessarily eating corned beef and canned tuna. I see them eating bamboo, right?
That's right. That's some good stuff. Don't sleep.
and Wendy's #1 and the Big Mac. So the question then becomes is that whether or not Wendy's #1 that has gone from $6 to $7, whether or not that have more of an impact on the vulnerable group as opposed, let's say, the increase in the price of corned beef. So the point I want to make here is that we make the assumption that that these price increases with respect to the overall basket, it's going to adversely impact the poor. Or somebody else will say, well, oh no, it won't impact the poor. But the question is, where are the studies that underpin some of these statements that we are making?
Let me ask you, Professor. Let me ask you this, Professor Rupapinda joining us, economist. I have to ask this though. When we look at it, your prices are going to go up at the counter, at the teller or cashier. Sorry, your price on your receipt is going to go up. What the administration is saying, they're going to target this. This is now targeted. In terms of targeting, the revenue that they collect will be targeted to the actual vulnerable class, so that folks who can afford to pay for breadbasket items and VAT on it are able to do so, use that revenue collected and target it as assistance. But then I look at something else, right, Professor, where I look at where there is no targeted program for lower working class, lower middle class, and middle class that is being shrunken, right? That's going through a shrinkage. Where we talk about tax on your premiums, you don't hear anything about a transfer. You don't hear anything about we're going to make that easier. The target works for the group, I'm sure, that needs it the most. We understand that. But then when you're talking about taxation, where we remove certain exemptions, that this is also going to affect a class or group of people who are not a part of the 1%. And the 1% is what skews our GDP. That 1% is what makes people think that we're undertaxed. But Bahamians will say, by and large, we're pretty much strapped for cash. So where do you see economically the possible stimulus on the removal of exemptions from everything?
But again, and I guess I would give, in terms of my professional objective assessment in terms of the stimulus. And again, I don't know in terms of, with this sort of economy, when you're talking about in terms of a stimulus, in terms of using Bahamian dollars as a way to really, in terms of stimulate. I mean, to me, the growth of this economy is largely determined by US dollars, right? And I think because, we talk about, let's say, in terms of reduction in terms of 12 to 10%, et cetera, and so on and so forth. But in reality, the way that I see it is that what will drive aggregate consumption or overall consumption within the economy, et cetera, is really in terms of income, right? And the long and short of it all here is that while a lot of these measures are good, well, to the extent which is targeted, I think it's a very healthy sort of discussion in terms of, hey, look, let us look in terms of how we can make some adjustments with respect to the overall value-added tax. One of the things to also bear in mind is that, for example, that came out even during the supplementary budget presentation, and again, you can keep me honest, there are like about 17,000 people thereabouts who are still getting unemployment assistance.
Yes.
I've seen, and I don't think to date we have had any surveys with respect to the unemployment, the unemployed.
No, we haven't gotten the true number.
But I've seen some statements in terms of some of the policymakers, anywhere from like 24 to like 30-something% in terms of the unemployment numbers. So in reality, what is going to really drive consumption in this economy is really getting people back to work.
Right away.
Right.
On that.
So one of the things here is that while it is good to have a discussion in terms of the value-added tax, the overall reduction from 12 to 10%, a discussion in terms of how the application of 10% to the breadbasket items, how it would impact the vulnerable members within the economy. One of the things to not lose sight of is that how do we increase overall aggregate income within the economy, and we have to find ways of getting people back to work.
I think that's and I thank you so much for this, Rupa, because I think it's interesting what you're saying is that, hey, listen, based on what you're saying, and let me know, you keep me honest, is that you don't view this reduction as a stimulus the way some may assume or see, because really for our economy, it doesn't that propensity or the ability to spend isn't there because the income isn't there, and our income isn't there because we don't have that level of activity, where our activity is connected primarily to US dollars, international funds. So that's fascinating that you would view it that way, and it's a great point. We really just need to get people back to work. That means we need to revive the economy. The number one stimulus, of course, is income, and folks don't have income to spend. So, and looking at where the areas where the VAT will be reduced and then increased, it's interesting. I'm looking forward to this conversation with Minister Michael Alkitis on Friday. Rupert, thank you so much for the time. Always a pleasure. I would like to see any modeling you decide to do. Someone says we do more than eat. We know how much that saves me at Kelly's or JBR or many other places outside the food store. I agree with you, Anton. And it will save folks outside of food. I'll tell you that. For a lot of folks, it will save us. But that's going to be very interesting to see how does it. I don't see it necessarily. I think on a big ticket items, you probably see people say, you know what, we'll run with this now. Let me buy this piece of property now. I might save, $2,000 on my VAT. But I think it's interesting. Thank you, Rupert. I appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you too, Nahaja.
All right. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. When we come back, let's switch gears. And I also want to introduce you to this brilliant young Bahamian woman who's a musician. I want to share that too. But when we come back, let's talk some business. Let's talk some money. I've got Matt Sweeting and Nathaniel Butler. Things have started to change a bit. Yeah, things are changing or rapidly moving with regards to real estate. And where are the opportunities there for everybody and the average Joe? You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. We'll be back after this.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
To The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Hope everybody's doing well, taking care of yourself, living your best life. Yeah, baby. Woo! All right. You felt that? That was the need to push that out there. All right, everyone. It's Wednesday. started off the show with the recognition or the understanding that, or the announcement from the Minister of Education that a bunch of students and schools will not be opening for face-to-face until next year, right? I was trying to skim through the speech. That's a whole other kettle of fish. I see my guest, Matt Sweeting. I know you can hear me. Matt, just cut on all of your microphones and your cameras so I can see you, make sure that you're ready to go. And if you can't, then I need you to restart so you can jump back on. But we want to talk about something now. It's Wednesday. And so we're going to talk about property. We're going to talk about purchasing and the opportunities there. Again, why do I do these shows? I do these shows for us. Again, we got to be trying to live to get out of the rat race. There's no such thing as you ain't smart enough. You're not capable. We got to move out of the limiting mindset and limiting belief system so that we can all, of course, move to the next, the next level that we wish to move into. And he is, right? So someone's saying Matt can help. He's a good guy. I know Matt is my guy. So we have Matt Sweeting. And let's see if we have Matt. Matt, you need to get yourself sorted there and send me a text if you can hear me. So let's talk about it a little bit. All right. First things first, one of the trends and things that we're learning and looking at in real estate, and I have to do this now because my guest is having some technical issues, so we'll go with this. All right. Interesting things that are happening in the market in country with regard to real estate. And one of the main things that's so interesting about it to me is that property is moving. Property has been moving. And I see Matt now. We finally got him, and I think he's ready to go. Property, your mind is pandemic. People ain't as broke as you think, right? I need Matt to tell me what's the demographics of the unbroke folk, because I need to know exactly who is not as broke as I think. Because folks, whilst we were in lockdown, property and homes were being sold, and not just any type of property. These are high-end properties. The vacation rental market is robust. It is back. And I'm a big proponent of that. I can tell you because I live it. I know what it is. It really does make money. Like really. Like no joke. Slap yourself. You'll be a happy person once you price it right. Including that, your energy costs, including that, your cable costs, including it, your cleaning costs, any trinkets, put all of it in there so that you don't get hosed, because BPL will ruin your profit margin. I'll tell you that now. Welcome, Matt Sweeting, founder, owner of One Oak Realty. Matt, welcome, buddy.
Hey, what's up? It's good to be on. Boy, hey, when you got so much tabs open, couldn't figure out where the tab was coming from, where the voice was coming from, but I am here now. It's good to be here.
You sound like my husband is having like 4,000 tabs open, Matt. How does the computer still run with all those tabs running? It just makes no sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us a bit, Matt, what has been going on? The last time you were here on the show, we were talking about, we always talk about this. And for the record, folks don't know, Matt Sweeting is my realtor. Matt is our family realtor. Matt and I have been, God knows, I didn't realize we were this old, Matt, but we've grown up together.
Oh boy, I'm telling you.
Kids and everything.
We are there.
So the last time we were together, Matt, we were talking about and this was in the beginnings of the pandemic, I think, and somewhere coming into the middle, how who can get into this market at this point where revenue is a little low. Tell folks about where we are, the country is firstly, on the property train, and where are there opportunities for folks to get in.
Yeah. So let me start with the state of the market. The state of the market is extremely exciting right now, right? And so I'm speaking to a number of my colleagues. I just started my own brokerage this year. And so One Oak Bahamas is the new kid on the block. But there are agencies. I contributed to an article at one of the local gazettes recently. Mm-hmm. And one of the companies that they got comments from was 100 years in business, right? Another agency is 15 years in business. Every agency in the country is saying this is the absolute best year in real estate in history. Now,
that's crazy.
That is crazy. Because I check my bank account whilst I wait on these many deals we put on the contract to close. And I'm wondering, where are people who were in hospitality, who who have been in law enforcement, who've been at these places that have constrained their income and strained their incomes. Where are they getting the money from?
Yeah.
But again, a number of things that we could look at that is driving this. Again, as you mentioned, hospitality is back.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some 2019 numbers in hospitality, right? Construction is up. Contractors are considerably busy, even though construction prices are high,
Yeah,
right?
I was about to say.
Commercial banks are very motivated to extend mortgages to people who are qualified. And so there are a number of drivers that are driving this boom. And what's notable to me, Nahaja, is that it's on both ends of the spectrum, right? And so, while the predominance of our clients is that under 500,000 market, we dabble in that higher end space. And even in the higher end space, we're seeing similar or even more impressive results.
Yeah. Yes.
Where Ocean Club properties are sitting on market for days. They're getting above asking. Our agency specifically, we've been in 3 bidding wars in the last, I want to say 2 weeks. We've been in 3 bidding wars. And so again, this is a different time. Showed a property yesterday, 2 full price offers, one with all cash. Who got $150,000 cash? Nahaja, if you haven't, we can need to talk later.
We can talk after the break. I ain't got that. Don't worry about that. We're not in it.
So the market's doing very well. There's a lot of opportunity.
Oh, and that liquidity is interesting. Okay, there's also something I think that's happening too, though, where folks are sitting on homes and are saying, "Let me get my equity out and use the equity to help fund the second project or the third project." Are you seeing that happening? Is that is that a part of what's going on? Are you seeing homeowners trying to get their next property, or are you seeing developers more in the race? Or are these predominantly first-time home buyers in the market?
Predominantly first-time home buyers. We do have that demographic you speak of. People using equity is a bit of a minority, and I think just there's not enough education around it, right? I think that's a huge opportunity. And again, as I constantly comment that when we look at the range of investment and financial opportunity space in the Caribbean and more specifically the Bahamas, we are limited, right? Mm-hmm. And so we do not have an extremely robust a stock market that we can invest in, and it supplements what we do full time. Mm-hmm. Real estate, though, because we're in a very great real estate market, more Bahamians need to be looking at real estate as their way to accelerate their financial ambitions.
Yes.
Yeah. And the way to do that, and I think another thing that I often comment on is the fact that there's a lot of that old school mindset within the Bahamian culture. So the Bahamian culture was you buy a home, you die in that home, right?
Yeah.
And when we think back of our parents, the goal was to get a home of your own, and you live in that home, you pay it off, and you own it free and clear, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't know if that mindset suits our generation for a number of reasons, right? When I think about my mother and even more so my grandparents, they were very conservative. They did not have big financial ambitions. Our demographic and our generation is a different breed entirely.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We have big financial goals. We want all of the bag, not some of it, right?
All of it. And we have a timeline on it too, Matt. Tell them.
I'm telling you. And so for that reason, real estate needs to be that way that we do that. And the way to do that is potentially extract the equity out, find someone in real estate that you can trust. I'm here. But find someone in real estate that you can trust that can say, hey, where is the opportunity in real estate that's either going to be a short-term or long-term play? Short-term play means, hey, are there opportunities on the market now? And yes, they are, where I could buy something, potentially renovate it for a fraction of the price, buy it for a fraction of the price, put some money back into it and resell it. Yes, there are opportunities like that.
Yes.
Then alternatively, there are opportunities where you could get a potentially repossessed property, right? Do a slight rehab to it and rent it for life, right? And so there are both opportunities that are available in this market right now.
And I'm so happy that you mentioned that, Matt, because of course, we tend to have fun with these type of conversations, right? Because the opportunities are there. Like there are so many opportunities there. The rehab one, okay. So you know how we go, Matt. Our whole thing is a property should be, until you are balling, it should be something that gives you revenue, right? I can't afford for my house to give me, I can't afford for this property to be only a liability until I own it, right? So I and we believe, okay, rental property, live in one, especially if you have no kids, right? Or if you have kids, just build the extra room on it, but make sure you have leverage and whatnot.
Yep.
I think that there are a lot of people who sit with equity in their homes and don't even understand that don't panic. The rates that are in the bank right now, you won't see these rates often.
Yeah, agreed.
So if there's a 3.85 rate on a mortgage and you have the equity in your house, you can go to look at the repossessed list and decide, okay, I see a house there let's find the space. I mean, and there are homes everywhere, Matt. There are
homes everywhere. So just yesterday we had one in the South Beach area, right? So South Beach again. See, because and I hope this is where you're going with this, Nahaja, and correct me if I'm wrong. But again, when we talk about equity, again, it's not, you may not yet have achieved the full value of your home. And let's start from the definition of equity, because right? So if you own a home for $100,000. Right, or it's appraised at $100,000, and you only have $20,000 left on your mortgage, you have $80,000 in equity that you can use. The bank is willing to give you 80% of that amount, right? Yeah. And so that means that money now you could go out and buy other real estate with, potentially with no money down, right? It would vary from institution to institution, but that is the general feel of that. And so we just had something in South Beach the other day that's $150,000, and I call this a gem. People constantly do me bad on Facebook for these properties I post. And
you post somewhere.
Have you seen how Facebook is be killing your boy online? But in any there are two things that I am excited about with that, and I laugh, and I promise to post a video, but some of the nastiest comments people posted. Number one, there's someone for everything, right? And so when I walk in and cash in my $3,500 check, commission check for that that $75,000 property in Yellow Elder that people was cracking on me about, then it ain't so funny no more. It ain't so
funny more, right? Who's laughing now?
But also on the flip side of that, this house we're selling in Yellow Elder now, these people who are buying the home want their own home, right? They're in their 40s, 50s now, and so their ability to borrow and get long amortization is no longer there.
Yeah.
Right? And so, when I look at that, I realize that this home is someone's dream. And the ability to participate in facilitating someone's dream is a huge thing for me. So there are two things that contribute to that. But even in that Yellow Elder home, some people, and this is another thing that I find oftentimes with Bahamians, not every home you buy you need to feel like you should live in, right?
That's right. Say it again.
So not every home that you buy you would live in. That's right. Because people buy with that mindset at times, and I think that's holding a lot of people back, right? Because they look at a home in Yellow Elder and listen, nothing wrong with that area, but you might not want to live in that area. But what you need to appreciate is, and I'll just use Yellow Elder might not fit this exact criteria, but it's close to the hospital. It's near a bus stop. When you look at factors like that, who is going to rent this home and how good of a tenant could I get?
Yeah.
If you're getting a mortgage for $75,000, I'm going to throw out an arbitrary number. I haven't done the math on it, but let's assume the mortgage on that is $600, $700 a month. And let's assume, let's assume for a 3-bedroom, 1 bath in Yellow Elder, you could get $1,000, possibly even $1,200 a month. And that is a reality.
That's a reality. Hold on, you got a house in Yellow Elder for that. I need to talk to you about Yellow Elder.
I sold it already.
What you're hitting on, if you're just tuning in, Matt Sweeting, owner and master realtor, but I call him owner of One Oak Realty, and my realtor, right, love this guy to pieces, is the ability to look at a property as an opportunity, right? And we look at it as property. I always tell folks, I look at it as property, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I could live in one. I don't mind neighbors for a while. Can I split it where it makes me money so that if I lose my job tomorrow, will I be able to pay the mortgage, right? And so that's why, personally, a home was never something my husband and I, in terms of a single family, was something we looked at. We were always like, if the economy shifts, if I lose my gig, if you lose your gig, if the company goes belly up, can we still depend on income? One of the things that I think we look at too, or what we need to consider is a small investment space can be split into like rooms now for vacation rentals. People are now splitting up their own homes. The children are empty nesters, and they're splitting it up into rooms. Yeah. And real estate companies are now selling places with that vision in mind. Oh, great income opportunity. Mm-hmm. Before I get what are your thoughts on that? The lucrativeness of taking a home and dividing it.
Yeah, a huge opportunity again. If you were in a home where you do not occupy all of the space, then you have to realize, right? Let's use the same scenario about this $100,000 property, but you're only occupying one bedroom because the kids are gone. You're only occupying one bedroom, kitchen, bathroom. You got another bathroom and bedroom that's being quote unquote unused, right? And so let's read. And again, because the kids aren't there, you pretty much spend all your time in your bedroom now, right? Mm-hmm. And so if that is the case, then there's the potential of you saying, and I think I commented on this before, that there are a number of people, friends of mine, who live in gated communities who have their Airbnb guests share the same door with them, right? Yeah. And that's kind of contrary to Bahamian culture, right? We're a little bit more private than that, mm-hmm. right? We like walking around and slipping headcloth, right? And so that might not be everyone's cup of tea, but if you're open to that, I've done that when I've traveled. And again, there's a bit of a security concern, so you need to screen people a little bit more when you're sharing the same roof with them. But it's a huge opportunity to now, for a property that you're paying $600, $800, maybe your mortgages, let's call it $1,300, to now defray those costs, add some money back to your pocket by renting that out on Airbnb, VRBO, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and before we take a quick break, someone had a question. At what stage of your mortgage does equity begin?
That's a good question. I think it begins. It could begin nearly immediately. Yeah. Right. So you could buy a home. Yeah, you could buy a home with immediate equity. And so let me tell you. Go ahead.
No, last time I checked, it's 6 months. Once you are living in the domicile for 6 months, you can then start seeking equity.
Okay. Extraction.
And it depends. So you have to be, if you're living in the space, you get more equity. If it's renting, you get less equity. I think that's fascinating stuff there too. Yeah. So wherever is your dominant, where you live, you get more equity. So I was thinking about it. If it's commercial property, so what you're saying is, if I don't live in my property, I get less equity than if I live in it. I think that sucks. Well, maybe I just didn't ask about all of this commercialness of a property.
Right.
But I figured that something that's rental is considered commercial. Isn't that the case? Rental property is considered commercial.
Over 3 units are considered commercial.
Over 3. So it's 3 or less is residential. Anything more. All right. Well, I ain't there yet. Okay. When we come back, we've got my good friend Matt Sweeting and, of course, Druber Solutions himself, Nathaniel Butler, joining us. We're talking about real estate. I really want you guys to meditate on this whole thing of equity and using it to your benefit in investment opportunity. And I'll tell you a trick. You could just send it over to someplace nice like CFA, let it sit there for a month or 2, and then boom, you got cash. You're rich. You didn't hear from me. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. We'll be back right after this.
J.S. Johnson Insurance Agents are the best. Reliable service, we've been on the scene, protecting since 1919.
We are working to protect our country, our people, and our livelihoods so that we can move forward. The vaccine is safe. The vaccine is easy. The vaccine is essential for our recovery. If we want to rebuild our economy, if we want to get back to our jobs, if we want to get back to our lives, our families, we must do this together.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
It's the hit back with Nahaja Black. It's the hit back with Nahaja Black. It's the hit back with Nahaja Black. It's the hit back with Nahaja Black.
Back, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We got Matt Sweeting joining us. Druber Solutions, my guy himself, the one and only Nathaniel Butler, always here. You two are two of my favorite people. Okay, my husband Mark, when he never gets jealous because he understands that y'all just gonna stay being favorites. It doesn't even matter. Unmute your mic, Nat. Welcome to the show.
Wow, thanks for having me back. I really, really appreciate you. I want to say special shout outs to Matt for jumping in there and talking about real estate. I was just there taking notes and I had to catch myself and I'd be like, oh yeah, Matt and we talk about this.
Yeah. You're actually supposed to be on the show. Yeah, stay focused, buddy. Stay focused. All right, so we're talking about, about real estate, the opportunities that exist, right? And where I wonder sometimes if we lose people with this conversation, right? Because I know that there are folks who cannot afford, they think any sort of property at this point. And the reason why I always do it is because I need for those who are able to get up so that they can look back and help and teach and help someone else to be able to move up. So it's like a movement train, right? We all grow together. But I want to ask you, Matt and Nat, and since you're just here, let's talk about it as the, financial planner. How do folks get the first property? What do you say to someone who's saying, I want to get that first property? What are some of the rules of the road you would say to them?
Well, a couple of things you have to take into consideration. We have to be realistic in regards to the resources that we currently have. A lot of persons who want to get their first property you always hear me talk about it. They have West Wind's dreams, but you might have time with money. And the reality of it is, a couple of things you need to do. First, make sure, one, you're on a stable job. If you're an entrepreneur, it's going to be a little bit more harder, but you can still do it. You can still do it. Two, you want to make sure that you have some savings. The savings that's going to be needed for the deposit that you're going to have to make, and also the closing costs. Mm-hmm. Closing costs are the legal and sometimes real estate fees that are attached to it, along with taxes. And then the last and the most important thing is you want to start to develop your relationship with the financial institutions. We have from banks, we have from credit unions, we have insurance companies, and even mortgage lending entities here in the Bahamas, all that can assist you. Of course, at different price points, but here's the beautiful thing. Once you put yourself in that position and you build the relationship, it's a little bit more easier to get the loan from that entity. And the last one and the most important thing is understanding the usage and the need of the property. Your first home has to be a starter home. I mean, I'm just being realistic. Our first home has to be a starter home. So we're not looking at something extravagant. We might be looking at something from a standpoint of maybe we're going to rent a portion of it, or maybe we need to add on to it, or maybe we're going to live in it for a period of time until we could do better and move into a bigger place. We have to have those type of conversations. But the challenge I find, and I let Matt speak to it a little bit more, we are very quick to become sentimental with the real estate property that we have purchased.
Yeah. We mowed that lawn. We planted those hibiscus. That's our yard.
So when it comes down, and I've seen couples fight a lot on this, or individuals struggle within themselves, knowing that, hey, I probably just make barely enough. We call it house poor. You make it barely enough just to pay the mortgage itself and some of the other expenses, and you basically broke.
Yeah.
You basically
and it'll ruin a relationship. It'll ruin finances and infidelity. Till the number 2, right? Reasons for your end of day. And I want to add a point to that too, just as a thought. And I say this in love. Ask yourself the question: is getting this house or this property going to make you financially free? The property, the first property. Most people will be like, no. Especially if it's a home, because all you're seeing in this home is a mortgage. So a lot of folks get into it and say, I've always wanted a home. I want to put my children in a home. Great. But then you ask yourself, okay, I want to put my kids in a home. And then what? Can you afford it? If you are a single mother, if you lose your job, what happens? I am a big proponent. Do not buy a home if you could avoid it first go. I'm telling you, just don't fall in love with a home, because it probably won't be your dream house anyway.
No.
Right?
That dream becomes a nightmare real quick when pressure is applied. And you can even have your job and still have other circumstances, health, family members having challenges.
Someone passed away.
You know? And Matt and I, we are very vocal on getting the income generation part of it going first. Yes. It doesn't have to be in real estate, but just getting just more than that one stream of income, so that when you do move into the process of getting that ideal home, there's comfort in being able to afford it. Sometimes with that one stream, you find yourself running the risk of the external factors, the economy, the industry, the job. You got to be careful with that. You got to be careful with that. I hear somebody, yep, I agree with that. Plenty house poor people out here. Plenty house poor. And if you are in that situation, you can change it. It might just require a little bit of effort and work, but you can change it. Yeah.
And listen, sometimes you have to live like no one else so that you could live like no one else. Get a little bit uncomfortable, man. You know, I think that's one of the main things. Discomfort sometimes is great for change. And you end up in a financial spot, and it requires and it demands you do something you didn't want to do. You didn't want to share a bedroom. You didn't want to have to split your house in a third and rent it. Right. But now you have to, and you will then open yourself up to opportunities. Guys, I like to make sure when I'm leveraged, I'm straight. I don't like when the odds are against me. Someone asked a question. Would you recommend buying out of pocket or getting a loan if you can afford it? There are trains of thought. I like to say, if you got the cash, use the bank money, stay liquid. That's my thought. Matt, who will go first?
Depends on the person. It really comes down to depending on the person, because let's just say you have all the resources and you just check out for the bank. You know, you're the ideal client. But if that person, from a mindset standpoint, believe that billing out of pocket is just them, you know, they won't be comfortable with a loan. So you'll find that individual will be more into house sharing, where you're splitting up the house and trying to generate other forms of income and then move on to another house. You find that they would be more advantageous for something like that. But in regards for persons with a loan, that's the more traditional route, and nothing's wrong. No pathway is wrong. All pathways help you get to your destination. You just need to figure out, does this best suit me? Does this best suit me at this current time? Yeah. And will this help me reach the destination that I want? I think most persons would start the pathway, and once they get more knowledge, they begin to realize very quickly that they actually want to do a U-turn, go the other way.
Yeah. Matt, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say, again, there's no clean-cut answer for this. It would vary and based on that person's circumstances and financial ambitions, right? So we were just working with a lady who was looking to get out a home that had structural issues. The home still has value, but she realized that if she continues to sit in this home, that it's going to continue to lose value, right? So the idea we had for her was, well, let's get you out of this. Let's acknowledge the structural issues, and maybe we'll find a contractor who will buy it, right? But let's buy that home. She's an older lady who hasn't worked in some time. The next home that we find for you, we'll buy it all cash, right?
There you go.
And so that circumstance calls for an all cash purchase, but
Because of the age. Yeah.
because of the age, right? But for most people, I more often than not, I would be suggesting, and again, I'm a specialist in real estate, but just of my knowledge of the industry, I think that money could serve you in better ways if you had some liquidity. And so
I will tell you from.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Finish that thought, Matt.
I would be trying to think about what can I do with my money outside of my mortgage that'll pay for my mortgage.
There you go.
Right.
I can tell you off of my from our own experience, having liquidity, deciding, even in the story of going to a certain level, right? Like, in retrospect, long story short, if we could go back in time and do it differently, we would. We would have kept all of that money, left that in the bank, and used that as our form of collateral, because we still ended up needing to go and get a mortgage anyway. But now you don't have the liquidity that you had previously, and the bank doesn't care how much money you had previous. Right. They don't care about all of that. So I would definitely recommend, if you have liquid cash, that is your leverage that you can't ever get back. That is your leverage. So then now you use that, you pay your down payment, you use that cash that is left, and do something else after you've gotten your mortgage. That is an opportunity to generate income as well. So I think that's something there as well. Let's go to another thought here, and I know we have to go to a break. Someone says, how do I determine how much to rent for an Airbnb? Matt, thoughts?
Yeah. So I would say start by researching all of the websites. You got VRBO, you got Airbnb, and there are a couple of more that escape me right now. Even Expedia, you could get
Booking.com, Expedia.
Yep. You got it. And so start your research there. Matter of fact, this is the same strategy that appraisers use to determine how much a property is valued. They look at other properties that compare to this, right? So again, if we were hypothetically use, only because we mentioned this house in South Beach earlier, if we were to use that for example, and don't sleep and believe that people in South Beach ain't have their place on Airbnb.
Oh, they do.
You go on Airbnb and open up all these tabs. You'd be like me and you got about 16 tabs open, and you figure out what are properties in my range, in my area renting for. And this is where it's going to tell you, I could charge more if I put a pool table in the back, if I had board games, if I had a PlayStation console, I could charge more for my rental. And so you kind of compare apples to apples, find properties that compare to yours, and then use that as a metric for what I could rent for. And then obviously you start testing, right? If you put it on the market and you go 30 days with no bookings, that's an indication you're a little bit too high.
Yeah, and that's definitely what it is, right? You don't want to be too low. You don't want to be too high. One of the things that, again, with pricing is definitely, like you said, Matt, the comparables, right? Look at the comparables in the community where you are. Go on to VRBO, go on to Booking.com, Airbnb, look at your competition and determine why their prices is there. But you always start with the base, right? What are your costs? Yeah. How much is the cost per, when you do your monthly bill with BPL, that's your nightly rate, then divided by the amount of nights. What does it cost to clean? Of course, your cleaning expenses, make sure that's in there when you set up your account. What does it cost just for maintenance? You're going to have to maintain the space, right? What if you, so there are things that you put in there. If you have incidentals where you pay for trinkets, like if you buy treats, man, listen, I used to put everything in there. Oh my God, I know what it is.
I was just thinking at Nahaja, I think that's such a slept-on opportunity in rental in Airbnb. Obviously, again, it adds like short-term rentals come with headache. So you got to go into this expecting that there's going to be a little bit of headache involved. There's a lot of moving parts, right? Yes. A lot of people inquiring about crazy questions. Is it going to rain next week on my vacation? And so there's some headache involved, but you're leaving so much money on the table by not having water there, wine there, case and collect there, that you charge people for, when they get there. So that's a huge opportunity.
Go ahead.
No, I think Matt hit the nail on the head for me. When I look at the Airbnb spaces that I'm involved with, we cannot discount these little items depending on the market. Do you see that patronize your space and the usage of the space? These little items, trust me, they go a long way. The add-ons. And I would tell persons when I first started, it was about, okay, adding on the car. But as time progressed, you realize that just putting a bottle of wine inside the fridge with variation, and then in addition to that, adding, like you talked about, the game console and certain amenities inside the place, you realize you could drive the value and the price up. And there's add-on costs when they arrive here as well.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't discount that. But to your point, Nahaja, I 100% agree with you. When you approach this, do not just approach this, okay, what's my mortgage? What's my water? What's my light? You have to look at everything. You have to look at even your team. Just like the hotel has the person to come in and clean and sanitation and those type of things, and whether you're going to be providing the supplies. I even want you to look at how much you have to wash the sheets and the linen and all of that stuff. You know, because these things do add up if not calculated in the price correctly.
And, great points on that too, because at some point, like I remember we had this question, is it cheaper for us to rent this long-term than to do vacation rental? Because then we looked at the long-term revenue and we didn't have to pay the light, right? Long-term rental, we're not paying the light, we're only paying the water, but we're not paying the cable. So we found that we were pricing too low. And so then we had to adjust, right? Because it was not it was easier to go long-term than it was to do vacation rentals. And there is a strategy for going low at the beginning, if your place is good at the beginning, so that you can get the reviews, so that you can become a super host, but you always increase the value of your property by the little amenities and so forth, so that when you do improve the price, it's based on the cost. Someone sent a question here. Why is, and then this is, this is for you, Matt, right? This is for you. Why is property super expensive in New Providence? Why is our property super expensive?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. And, when you think about the value of anything is determined by demand, right? Demand drives price. And the reason why property in Antris is very affordable is because there's not a super demand there. There's no real economy there. There's no driver for people to buy real estate there. When you do own real estate there and you build something there, who's going to live in it, right? So these are some factors that are driving the cost of real estate throughout the Bahamas. But now that answers the question, because a lot of people here who are looking for real estate, they want to buy it, they want to live in it. Our rental prices are high. Our resale price is high. And so for that reason, those factors drive the cost of real estate.
My God, rental prices is an understatement. I mean, why is a one bedroom all of a sudden like $9 million? This makes no sense, Matt. That's it, Matt. I blame you. I blame all realtors. You're selling us out.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick break. When we come back, the discussion on, we had, this was something in the news today, VAT will be placed on Airbnbs or vacation rentals. And so I start calling all kind of people now. What y'all talking about, Willis, right? y'all crossing all kind of lines. But it's interesting. I want to get your thoughts on it, not just on VAT, but just on where the opportunity lies in the market now. What should people be looking at as the ideal type of property to purchase? And then that, of course, from you, what is the market for? Well, and I think Nat, you'll tell me. Market for resale too. I want to know how much to sell stuff for as well. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black Guardian Radio. We'll be back right after this.
J.S. Johnson Insurance Agents are the best. Reliable service, we've been on the scene, protecting since 1919. J.S. Johnson Insurance has the test. You're always covered me. J.S. Johnson Insurance, peace of mind.
We are working to protect our country, our people, and our livelihoods so that we can move forward. The vaccine is safe. The vaccine is easy. The vaccine is essential for our recovery. If we want to rebuild our economy, if we want to get back to our jobs, if we want to get back to our lives, our families, we must do this together.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
It's the hit back with Nahaja Black. It's the hit back with Nahaja Black. It's the hit back with Nahaja Black. It's the hit back with Nahaja Black.
We're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. So y'all think that song, my theme song, is right? Y'all ain't ready. Listen to this.
It's the hit back. Hey, with Nahaja Black. Hey, it's the hit back. Hey, with Nahaja Black.
Yeah! You heard that little man. Y'all heard that fella. That fella got a little swag. He got a little swag. He got a little something going on now. Yeah, I appreciate him. That's Jathan. His parents, I like parents. They run out. So they didn't just want to make sure that I knew that he was listening. They needed to make sure I heard him singing it. So shout out to the parents who run out. That's how you know we behemoths. We run out the dog. I like Jathan. Jathan did a hell of a job on that one. I'm just saying, as my good friends, Nathaniel and Matt, I've never heard any of your children sing my song.
Yeah.
I did say it.
Adrian.
I did say it now. Let's be real now. Let's not go there. We can do a remix right now.
Get your children on board now. What happened, people? What happened? So someone says, I need to add rental property to my existing property. Someone says, Garen says, my little baby, she loves your song too. And she's only 2. Garen, you send the baby voice note, please, so I could play it on air. See, these real family. I like them.
Yes.
All these children I grew up between Matt and Nat, not one song. But we digress.
Oh boy.
All right. So, anyways, all right, guys, let's talk about this. How do folks now get into the market? And we discussed the first timers, but now we're talking about folks who want to say mix it up. How do we mix it up? Matt, what are your suggestions?
Yeah. And so, oftentimes people call and say, hey, I'm ready to buy. And then the first question is, do you have your money right yet? And that's where, Nat called me the other day, said he was on TikTok. Because my first response to that is you need to get your money right. And if you don't have your money right, there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to talk to someone who can teach you how to do that, right? And that's why Drew and I are such a great team, because I'm immediately sending people to them to figure out where they are in the financial space. And then you need to talk to your bank to see where you are right now as well.
Yeah.
Right? So after you've had those 2 conversations, if you check out on both of those, then we're ready to jam. And then we could start looking at property within your price range or even slightly above, because we're still seeing even in the seller's market, people getting anywhere from 5 to 15% off lists. So a property is property is listed for $200,000. You could potentially get it for $180,000.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's not a cash sale. That's not a cash sale.
That's not a cash sale. No.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah. And so the opportunities are out there. And then we get into the deal. But one thing to note is that costs are still super expensive, and so that means you need somewhere to the tune of about 15% in savings. Correct. To make the purchase happen. So if we use that $200,000 for example, we talking $30,000 that you need to have sitting in your bank account to make that deal happen.
Yeah,
so that is cost prohibitive right there. But again, as we say, that plenty of people got it.
Yeah, and that, and I like how you said it's cost. It's expensive, man. It's expensive. This ain't no small. I can't. Why we gonna live in America where you can get 1% down and $4 you put on, you got a house and you get the keys tomorrow.
I tell you.
Not how do folks, seriously, it's super expensive though. I just the initial costs are crazy. Give folks a walkthrough on the initial costs.
Yeah, so starting off, you have what we call the mortgage fees that you're gonna. Well, first and foremost, before we even get into all of that, first you got to start off with the lawyer 2.5 or 2%. And then on top of that, they have what we call disbursements, where they have to do title searches and all kind of other things that needs to happen. One of the things that also you have to take in consideration, if that property has property taxes on it, that also has to be cleared as well. And then you get into the bank fees. So you have the mortgage fees. If you don't have enough for a down payment, then there is the mortgage indemnity fee. And then you also have, on top of that, some other charges that the bank can also levy on top of all the fees that they are currently charging you. And then last but not least, then you also have what we call VAT stamp that you would pay in regards to transferring or acquiring the property. And
But
then,
this 10% need to happen fast. I needed to go back to 7.5.
if you have a real estate agent involved, they have to get their fees. If it's vacant land, 10, and if it's not, then it's 6. And so yeah, so like Matt said, when you add up all of these fees together, you have to literally go in with the mindset of having somewhere between 10, 15, 20% of the down payment, and being honest with yourself to know what you pre-qualify for. I would say to persons, don't call a real estate agent until you find out what you're pre-qualified for. Let's start there first and then call the real estate agent. But in regards to getting into the space, I have a slightly different view in regards to getting into the space. If you're going into the space for income or using real estate as a form of income, I would tell persons, and this is for anyone who does not have real estate asset. This is really for anyone who does not have real estate asset. I would get into the space. If I had to do it all over again, I would get into the space through real estate hosting. I will find somebody with the asset they're not utilizing or the property is underutilized. And then from there, determine whether or not, depending on the location or the locale of the property, whether it would be best suited for a long-term rental or whether it be best suited for a short-term rental.
Hold on. Break that down. What is real estate hosting? Is that like subletting?
Yes, to a degree, yes.
Huh.
So basically, I will go to you who have a property somewhere, whether it's New Providence on a family island, right? And I say to you, I could do it one of two ways. I could say to you, give me the monthly cost, and then all I now need to do is generate over that for me to generate a profit. Or we can come in partnership and we split the net revenue that is generated from it. So there's two ways that we can approach it. And what this does now, it makes it feasible for anyone who wants to get into the space. Once they have a good detail, good eye for renting and being a property manager, you can really, over a period of time, really generate the funds needed for you to purchase your own real estate asset yourself. And with having your system up and running, it makes it a little bit more easier for you to cross over into the long-term rental or to really stand out in short-term rentals. Yeah, go ahead.
No. I mean, I'm thinking that's my first mind is, so is it a barren land or is it like something on a family island that maybe they're just not using? Like, what are we talking?
We're talking about, it could be anything. It could be anything that is underutilized. So I give you an example.
Leasing.
Yeah. So we're kind of, but it's so for example, I'll give you an example. So we had a client who came in and they left their particular family island to come to New Providence. Reason being because their family member, parent that is, needed some senior assistance living. They needed someone in the house to help them out. So as a result of that, they had their house. Their house was vacant, and because when you don't occupy the space, it deteriorates a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
They decided to utilize that space and turn that into a rental. But they didn't want to do it by themselves. They were on another island, et cetera, et cetera. So they found someone who had no attachment to the property, and they came together, and that other person is now hosting. So they would invite persons from those sites that you guys would have mentioned earlier. And the money is now split at the end of the month.
All right.
Based on the nature of the house, the person had in mind of renting the entire house. when the person who was hosting came into the picture, they came with a slightly different concept where they just rented the rooms. And from that moment on, the numbers really started to work.
That exploded. Yeah. Okay, I got a few questions I want to ask. Someone says, sure, so 2-bedroom condo on Paradise Island, short term or long term? It depends. Mind you, all I hear is money, cha-ching, ching. So I was going to roll that bug over.
Condition of the condo.
Yeah,
condition
excellent.
Of the condo.
Yeah. What do you say, Matt, to that?
Yeah, same. It varies. Again, there's no clear-cut answer for it. It really depends. Maybe the yield on short-term rentals on Paradise Island might be high, and you could do. And there's something to consider in that short-term calculation as well as vacancy, right?
Yes.
And turnover, right? So that team that Nat talked about, it might take a day for that team to roll over. So someone checks out today, right? That person may not be able to come that evening, so that you could check someone in, or 12 could do a same-day check-in.
Yeah.
And so if that's a 24, now you reduce the amount of days you can do on maximum, right? So when you do the annual on that, does that give you more than what you would have gotten long term? And so again, it's a case by case scenario, Kim. A very good question. But on the face of it, generally speaking, we're leaning towards a short term rental, not taking into considerations all the many variables.
Yeah, listen, I my first thought is, Kim, clean it. Number one thing with Airbnbs, cleanliness.
Yes.
Safety, cleanliness. They will nitpick everything.
Oh, yes, they will.
Oh, they will. But if the space is clean, it don't have to be gorgeous with the furniture. You can say quaint.
Yes.
But it needs to be clean. A lot of people over PI with a lot of vacancy, I guess. Someone says, how much would you charge with a rental for PI with a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, pool? Man, listen, y'all don't understand. Sell PI. PI, but Atlantis, 4 steps from the beach, safe, bank, food, nightlife. And if it's not at the hotel, you can also say, but close to the action, but not in the action. So quiet.
Yes.
Y'all ain't serious, boy. I'd have done that, would have been finished.
You know what I normally tell persons, because remember now, for persons who are not in the real estate world, they don't have that mindset of, okay, how do I sell the location or the locale of the property? I normally tell persons, just go into the papers and look for properties nearby yours and look at the description that they have.
Yes.
And that will blow your mind of items that you never even thought that had value in regards to locale. Oh man, it brings a lot of value.
Yeah, and someone else, large living room. What about a 1-bedroom condo in Cable Beach? As long as you got a room, you could call it a studio. If it's just a living room, we'll have to pull out the TV, and that's a rentable asset. Guys, thank you so much for the time, as usual. Appreciate you. Matt Sweeting, One Oak Realty. Nathaniel Butler, Druba Solutions. Thank you guys so much. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black Guardian Radio. See you guys. We'll talk tomorrow. We're out.